Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be diving into a really fascinating topic that was inspired by the work of Jay Poole from TechFrontiers on YouTube. Open source AI and what it means for your privacy. Now, you hear a lot about open source being the key to safety, transparency, especially when it comes to AI. Sounds great, like the Linux or the Firefox of artificial intelligence, right? But today, we're here to uncover whether open source really truly means safe when it comes to AI and your data. So let's unpack some of those misconceptions and really dive into the hidden risks that many people might not even realize exist.
Yeah, there's a certain logic to the idea that open source equals greater security and privacy. With traditional software, having the code open to public scrutiny means vulnerabilities can be identified and addressed much more quickly by a community of developers. However, when we step into the world of AI, the landscape shifts considerably.
So where's the logic breakdown? Why doesn't that same principle apply neatly to AI?
Well, AI models. They're more than just lines of code. They're intricate systems trained on vast data sets, often containing billions of parameters, many of which remain hidden from view. This makes comprehensive auditing a far more complex task than examining traditional open source software. It's these pre-trained weights, these massive data sets that form the AI's knowledge base that can harbor a spectrum of potential risks.
That's interesting. So even if the code itself is open, there are still these hidden elements within the AI's training that we can't fully examine. So what kind of risks are we talking about specifically?
Well, there are four primary categories of risk to consider, each with significant implications for your privacy. First, we have hidden bias or backdoors. Imagine a scenario where a seemingly benign AI assistant is designed to respond differently depending on your geographical location or specific keywords you use. Perhaps it provides region-specific answers that subtly reinforce existing biases, or even activates hidden behaviors when it encounters certain trigger words.
So the AI could be subtly manipulating your interactions without you even realizing it.
Precisely. It's a manipulation that can be incredibly difficult to detect, especially when the model's code itself appears open and transparent. This leads us to the second category, pre-trained weight triggers. The training data used to shape these weights is often a black box. We lack the ability to fully scrutinize the biases or hidden instructions that may lurk within.
So it's like we're getting a seemingly transparent recipe, but we have no idea what ingredients went into making it. What are the potential consequences of this black box training data?
Imagine a social media platform employing an open source AI model for content recommendation. The code might be flawless, but if the training data was skewed towards certain political ideologies or social perspectives, the AI could inadvertently amplify those biases.
So it's not just about intentional manipulation, but also about the unintended consequences of biased data influencing the AI's behavior. It paints a rather concerning picture of how these systems could be shaping the information we consume and the decisions we make.
That's precisely why understanding the provenance of the training data is crucial. We need to critically assess where it came from and whether any potential biases may have been baked into the AI's very foundation.
It makes you realize how important it is to be aware of these hidden layers, even when dealing with seemingly transparent open source AI. Are there other risks beyond these hidden biases and data triggers?
Yes. The third area of concern revolves around software and cloud vulnerabilities. Even if an AI model is inherently secure, the platform or infrastructure used to access and utilize it can introduce significant risks.
So the safety net of open source might not extend to the entire ecosystem surrounding the AI model.
Exactly. A key example here is inference tracking. This involves logging and analyzing the queries you submit to an AI model. Even if the model itself doesn't retain your data, the platform hosting it might be quietly collecting valuable insights about your interests, preferences, even your location.
So even though the model itself isn't directly storing my data, the platform I'm using to interact with it might be. It's a good reminder that open source doesn't automatically equate to anonymity. What's the final risk category?
The fourth, and perhaps most unsettling risk, is the malicious use of open source AI. The very transparency that makes open source appealing can be exploited by those with ill intentions. We've seen cases where open source models were modified to generate harmful content, spread misinformation, or even circumvent safety mechanisms designed to prevent misuse.
That's a bit alarming. Are you saying someone could take a seemingly harmless AI model, tweak it for malicious purposes, and then deploy it under the guise of open source?
That's exactly the concern. This type of manipulation can be incredibly challenging to detect, especially for users who lack the technical expertise to analyze the model's code or training data. It highlights the need for heightened awareness and a healthy dose of skepticism. even when engaging with technology that presents itself as open and transparent.
This has been a real eye-opener. It seems like even with the best intentions, open source AI can be manipulated and misused in ways that compromise our privacy and security. So what can we do to protect ourselves in this complex landscape?
That's a crucial question, and one we'll delve into further in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore some practical steps individuals can take to mitigate these risks and ensure their engagement with open source AI is as safe and informed as possible.
Sounds like we have a lot more to unpack. We'll be back after a short break to continue our deep dive into open source AI and privacy. Stay tuned.
So we've spent some time talking about the potential pitfalls of open source AI, especially when it comes to privacy. Now let's ground these concepts in some real-world situations to better understand how these risks can manifest.
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about risks in theory, but I think seeing how they actually play out in real-world scenarios makes it all the more impactful. So where should we start?
Let's revisit the concept of hidden bias or backdoors. We talked about AI models potentially being manipulated to react differently based on certain conditions. So imagine a seemingly harmless language model deployed as a customer service chatbot. On the surface, it appears helpful, efficient, answering questions, resolving issues. But what if this chatbot is subtly tuned to steer conversations about certain products or services in a specific direction?
So the AI could be nudging customers towards specific choices without them even realizing it. That's a bit unsettling. Could you give us a more concrete example?
Absolutely. Imagine you're interacting with the chatbot for an online retailer. You're asking about different laptop models, and the chatbot consistently steers you away from a particular brand, perhaps highlighting negative reviews or emphasizing minor drawbacks. It might even subtly promote a competing brand, even if it's not the best fit for your needs. This subtle form of manipulation, it can be very difficult to detect, especially if the model's code appears to be open and transparent.
It's almost like a digital sleight of hand where you think you're making an informed choice. But the AI is sort of pulling the strings behind the scenes. What about the risks associated with pre-trained weights? Can you give us a real-world example of how those might compromise privacy?
Let's consider a hypothetical scenario involving a job recruitment platform that uses an open source AI model to screen candidates. The platform boasts about using this open source model, assuring users of its fairness and transparency. However, what if the training data used to develop this model was sourced from a pool of resumes that already exhibited a strong bias towards certain demographics?
You're saying that the AI, even unintentionally, could be perpetuating existing biases in the hiring process.
Precisely. The AI might prioritize candidates from specific universities, backgrounds, or even genders, simply because that's what it learned from the biased data it was trained on. This can have a profound impact, limiting opportunities for qualified candidates and reinforcing systemic inequalities.
That's a powerful example of how seemingly neutral technology can inadvertently perpetuate harmful biases. It really underscores the importance of carefully examining the sources of training data and ensuring that AI systems are developed and deployed responsibly. Now let's move on to software and cloud vulnerabilities. How have these played out in real-world scenarios?
One example that comes to mind involves inference tracking, where seemingly secure AI systems are compromised due to vulnerabilities in the platforms they run on. Imagine you're using a popular open source AI model for image generation. The model itself might not store your data, but the platform hosting it could be tracking every image you create, analyzing your creative preferences, and potentially even lending this data to your online identity.
So even if the AI isn't directly collecting my data, the company providing access to it might be. That's a bit concerning.
It's a reminder that open source doesn't automatically guarantee privacy. We need to be mindful of the entire ecosystem surrounding the AI, considering the platform, the data flow, and the potential for hidden tracking mechanisms.
It's like assuming a restaurant is safe just because they use organic ingredients. You still need to consider the cleanliness of the kitchen and the overall hygiene practices. What about the final risk category, malicious use of open source models? Are there any real-world instances of that?
Unfortunately, yes. The open nature of these models can be a double-edged sword. There have been cases where individuals with malicious intent have taken an open source AI model, modified it to generate harmful or misleading content, and then released it back into the open source community.
So essentially, someone could weaponize an open source AI, using the guise of transparency to spread misinformation or even incite harm. Are there any examples of this happening?
We've seen instances where open-source image generation models were modified to create deepfakes, incredibly realistic but fabricated images or videos. These deepfakes were then used to spread misinformation or damage reputations. The open-source nature of the original model made it easier for malicious actors to make these modifications and distribute them widely.
These examples really bring home the point that open-source AI, while holding immense promise, also presents a unique set of challenges and potential risks. It seems like vigilance and a critical eye are more important than ever. So what can we do as individuals and as a society to navigate this complex landscape responsibly?
That's a great segue into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some practical strategies for mitigating these risks and ensuring open-source AI is harnessed for good without compromising our privacy or security.
I'm looking forward to learning more about those strategies. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 segments really exploring some of the potential risks of open source AI, even when it comes to something as fundamental as our privacy.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey into a complex and evolving landscape.
Definitely. We've uncovered hidden biases, data vulnerabilities, even the potential for malicious exploitation. So for the million-dollar question, what can we do about it? Is there any hope for harnessing the power of open source AI without sacrificing our privacy and security?
Oh, absolutely there's hope. It's not about abandoning open source AI altogether, but it's about approaching it with a balanced perspective, understanding both its immense potential and its inherent limitations.
Okay, I like the sound of that. So where do we start? What concrete steps can we take to protect ourselves in this rapidly evolving world of open source AI?
Well, first and foremost, we need to empower ourselves with knowledge. The more we understand about how AI works, the better equipped we'll be to identify potential risks and make informed choices.
So education is key. But knowledge alone isn't enough, right?
Yeah.
What practical steps can we take?
We need to move beyond passive consumption and start asking tough questions. Don't just blindly accept the claims of AI developers, especially when it comes to privacy. Dig deeper, research the origins of the models, scrutinize their training data, look for transparency in how these models are developed and deployed.
It's about becoming informed consumers of AI. Just like we're becoming more conscious of the food we eat and the products we buy, we need to be just as discerning with the AI systems we interact with.
Exactly. And speaking of informed choices, let's revisit that concept of self-hosting. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth emphasizing. If you're truly concerned about privacy, running open source AI models on your own hardware is one of the most effective ways to minimize the risks associated with third-party platforms.
Self-hosting sounds promising, but it also sounds a bit intimidating for someone who isn't, particularly tech-savvy.
It might have been a few years ago, but thankfully it's becoming increasingly accessible, even for non-techies. There are numerous resources, tutorials, communities out there to help you get started. You don't need to be a coding expert to explore this option.
That's good to know. So self-hosting is one option for those who want to take control of their AI experience. What are some other practical steps everyday users can take?
Well, don't underestimate the power of collective action. Support organizations and initiatives that are advocating for responsible AI development. Push for greater transparency, and demand stronger privacy regulations. Your voice matters, and it can influence the direction of this technology.
So it's about using our voices and our choices as consumers to incentivize companies to prioritize ethical AI development and robust privacy protection.
Precisely. And one final piece of advice. Remember that technology alone can't solve these complex challenges. Human oversight and ethical considerations need to be at the forefront of AI development, from the initial design phase to deployment and beyond. We need to be actively shaping this technology, not just passively consuming it.
So it's about striking a balance between technological innovation and human values, ensuring that AI development is guided by ethical principles and a respect for individual privacy.
Exactly. Open source AI has the potential to be an incredible force for good, but it's up to us to guide its development and deployment responsibly. We need to be vigilant, informed, and engaged to ensure that this technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. We've uncovered some potential pitfalls and explored ways to navigate this complex landscape. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of a topic that's going to continue to evolve in the years to come.
And that's the reality of this technology. It's a constantly evolving space. We need to approach it with a sense of curiosity, a willingness to learn, and a commitment to shaping its future responsibly.
Well said. And on that note, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on open source AI and privacy? Have you encountered any of the risks we've discussed? Share your experiences and insights in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going.
We're eager to hear your perspectives and continue this important dialogue.
Huge thank you to Jay Poole from TechFrontiers for inspiring this deep dive. Check out his channel for even more insights on AI and privacy. That's it for us today, folks. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.